Hi, I'm James from Rock Hard 4x4. We've got a lot of questions that have come in via email and Instagram and Twitter and stuff, and so we're here to answer some of them. Some of them are technical questions, and some of them are just general questions about Rock Hard 4x4 as a company. First one's going to start off from Max Bear via Instagram. Whopper or Big Mac, I'm more of a Chick-fil-A guy when it comes to lunch, but Mike Tublin come on an email, and his question is, when will we be doing install videos for the Cherokees? Currently, right now, we're in process of finishing a new filming location where we're going to have a studio set up to film. We will be doing the Cherokees, the XJs, doing a full cage, front rear bumpers, skid plate for the fuel tank, your sliders. We'll also be hitting the Grand Cherokees, the ZJs, and the WJs at that time. The JL will also be featured at that time also with a complete set of videos on it. I appreciate your question, Mike. Frank Cooley sent in an email here, and his question is, I've changed to a 3.8 liter that I've had. I'm going to a Hemi, and I have your skid plates, and I'm wondering what we got to do to them. We do make a Hemi conversion set of brackets, and it works on the majority of all the installs that are there. They've moved the mounts where they've welded them onto the motor mounts, and we've went ahead and made some brackets. Majority of the time they do work. I like to see guys that are doing the Hemi conversion because of the exhaust configurations to use one of our long arm style of oil pan skids. If you currently have our standard 6003 or 43 oil pan skid in aluminum or steel, you can simply trim the one edge to make the clearance you need when doing that Hemi conversion. Great question, and I appreciate it, Frank, for sending that in. John Sparks via an email sent in a question that says, boat side or tubular sliders for my JK. I do moderate trails. I try not to break my Jeep when I go out, but I want protection. So here's the difference between our style of boat side slider and a rocker guard tubular style that we build. Our tubular style rocker guards mount in multiple different locations. We mount it to the body bolts, and we mount to the pinch weld. And then on the new JL, we mount up into the upper part of the body also. This making our style of tubular style slider very strong. In fact, it's probably stronger than the majority of everybody else's in the industry. Our boat side sliders are probably an overkill part where the slider itself is stronger than the Jeep you're mounting it to. Okay? So under normal standard abuse, the boat side slider will take the abuse that you're putting it to and not do any type of damage. You got to remember though, the boat style slider is stronger than your Jeep you're mounting it to. Understand that with our tubular style or our boat side slider, you're not going to have a problem either way. Great question. Got one here from on Instagram from Grab-a-3. It says, who designed the cage and how many prototypes does it need to get to its present form? Years ago when my dad and I started off designing parts, my dad is a better designer than I am. I can do it, but it takes me a lot more tries than it takes him. He's very good at coming up with looking at it and getting it to a final form. We started off building cages back early 90, 91, where we were building them, and little simple things like my mom had a CJ7 that she drove quite a bit, and she was having a hard time getting in and out, so we put a handle up in the upper corner. So we started that. In early 1990s, we built some of the first dash-mounted cages. Just because I'm a fairly larger guy, and on a CJ5 that I drove back then, a 71, you were hitting your knees all the time. So we went to a dash-mounted cage. That's how the start of that come about. 10 years before anybody else come out with any type of dash-mounted cage. But that's how we design them. Was we've kind of grown over the years and added things to them. The collar thing come about as we were figuring out how to ship the cages. The collar has made it so that we have adjustability in our cages, but it also makes it so they break down. It makes it so the customer can install them. It makes it so in case you need to take one side of the dash off to get to something behind your dash of an electrical issue, you can do that. I know like on some of the new JKs right now, there's an airbag recall. This allows you to get in there, work on it without having to totally disassemble your Jeep. But as far as to get to your question, it's nothing for us to take 5, 10 tries at something sometimes, and that's just part of building parts. We build a cage and sell lots of them throughout the world every day. And so once we get it down, we're done. Nina Barlow, a personal friend, she owns Barlow Rentals out of Sedona and Moab and different parts of Colorado and stuff. And she says, how long till it'll be have JL skid plates? Nina, we have the skid plates available now. We're actually taking pre-orders for them. We will have them available in stock in about 2 to 3 weeks on the shelf, ready to ship out to you for your fleet. We did also build control arm skid plates. They're all extremely heavy duty. The skid plates on the JL are made out of available in 3/16 quarter, aluminum, steel, a lot of different versions. The biggest thing on the JL is they moved with the 8-speed transmission, they moved the crossmember further back. So it made the oil pan, if we would have made it in one piece, way too long to get the strength into it. So we've made the oil pan a little shorter, put some solid cross members going across there. When they moved the cross member further back in the JL, they made the frame where it's going to twist too much. We've added 2 solid steel cross members going across and a great set of skid plates for your JL. Blake's JK via Instagram sent in, are you planning JK fenders at all? A few years ago and a while back, we actually designed a full set of fenders for the JK. Here's the good and the bad about fenders on JKs. I like fenders in its own way as far as for the Southwest market where you're not running in snow and mud. But when you trim a fender all the way back here, you get a lot of stuff going forward. Our part of the country where you got snow and mud, they really don't work. The other thing that's good and bad about a fender on a JK or a TJ or JL is majority of the time the fenders that are getting made are stronger than the body panels that you're mounting them to. Okay? A lot of times on my own Jeeps, run the factory flares just because in case I do tear one off, I can pick up one on Craigslist, or a lot of shops got them laying out back, and for 20 bucks I can replace it. 50 Eastern Adventures via Instagram sent in, are the 2 square cutouts in the bottom of the Patriot series bumper for high lift recovery points? They are. They're located right here on the front of the bumpers. We got some plastic plugs in them. You just pop those out. It puts the stout of the high lift jack in there so you can raise your vehicle to change tire or work on it, whatever you need. And yes, that's why they're there. Joan, you got a great question, but how am I so darn cute? Thank you. Jeff Wright via Facebook sent in, says, what do you enjoy most about Jeeps? Years ago we got in this industry to get out to wheel. What do I enjoy most about Jeeps? I enjoy hunting. Hunting's a thing that I've enjoyed as a passion. I enjoy getting out in photography, getting out to the back country, wanting to make sure that I have enough vehicle to get over to the other side to where I want to go. I also like Jeeps because you can build a Jeep for what you want. There's no 2 Jeeps out there that are alike. That's what's cool about a Jeep. Stan Cottrell from Facebook sent in and says, hey Rock Hard 4x4, do you all have any plans to make body armor for a Jeep TJ? Also, what about a bolt-on winch guard Stinger versus a weld-on? Stan, for the TJ we build your front bumpers, your rear bumpers, your sliders for the side, a fuel tank skid, and a complete cage internal. The only thing I really don't build is an actual skid plate for the belly pan, and probably the reason is there's so many different styles and designs of suspension out there on the TJ that you really can't make one plate that fits the majority of the customers that are out there, but it's a great question on that. Bolt-on Stinger versus weld-on. Majority of our bumpers we do a weld-on just because it's a simpler application for us. We're a welding manufacturing facility. We have now for some of the JLs and the TJs and YJs and CJs build an actual bolt-on Stinger hoop design. Now the difference is we know the strength that we get in our weld-in design. We've went ahead and made our bracketry extremely strong. A lot of the guys that are out there are just using thin material when they put a bolt-on where it's more of a look. Our bolt-ons that we do build are extremely strong. But great question. Rich Puffenberger on Facebook sent in, says, I'm looking at getting a Rock Hard 4x4 full skid plate for my 2016 JKU and debating going steel or aluminum. I do rock crawling and I will be hitting the Rubicon Trail this summer. So here's a question. We actually built 3 different sets of skids for JK. 3/16 steel, 1/4 inch aluminum, and 1/4 inch steel. The differences between the 3. The 3/16 steel will take care of the majority of what everybody needs out there. Okay? If you are more running fire roads, you're not out abusing your Jeep as much, the 1/4 inch aluminum will do everything you need. The 1/4 inch steel is primarily designed for the guys that are really using their JK right now as a buggy. Okay, the 1/4-inch steel on the skid plates is way overkill. But if you're a guy that's using it with, that's as a buggy, that's really out bashing, that's what they're designed for, are those guys. 3/16 steel is for the normal customer that's out there. I think that's what I would recommend for yours. If you're towing it and weight is a big difference on your Jeep, then go to the aluminum. But I would say 3/16 steel for yours. Rich Crum set in on Facebook, says, I'm looking at replacing my Crossmember in my JK. Tell me why Rockhard's Crossmember is better. Well, Rich, what we've done is, a lot of guys are building a Crossmember just 3/16, and some of them are actually even using them open on the top. What we've done is, we're using 3/16 top and bottom, which makes a 3/8 sidewall on each side, which is where the strength is in that Crossmember. We're also using American steel versus China steel. So we've got a lot of strength in our Crossmember, but our sides of our Crossmember are all 3/8. On your Crossmember also, Rich, we've went ahead and made it with metric points as far as the so you can use your factory hardware as an installation, whether it meets the frame on the outside and on the lower section. One thing to keep in mind is when you install that Crossmember, do it on a level ground. Don't do it on a lift and stuff, because when you pull the Crossmember out, the frame will expand a little, kind of bows out a little bit on a JK. If you do it sitting on the ground, it'll make it so you can just pull it, put the bolts in, put it back in place. Another thing is, a lot of other guys have used odd hardware when we've went ahead and made special nuts that we weld inside our Crossmember that meet to the factory specifications as far as your thread and stuff on the factory bolts. Pat sent in on Facebook, says, when are you going to be in the Pacific Northwest next time? Pat, we're looking at some shows up there. We'll be. I haven't decided if I'm going to be doing it or actually want to, like Chad or one of the other guys that are out on the road all the time. But we will be up in the Pacific Northwest. We have done some shows up there in the past, and we'll be looking at doing it again here. Just pay attention to our Facebook and Instagram, and you'll see where we're headed next. Sent in by TJ Eper, VIA of JK Wrangler, says, I'm wondering about what thoughts you have on the roll cage supports on the JL. I have your roll cage in my TJ. What direction is Rockhard taking with the JLs? Well, it's something that we've come up with a lot of ideas yet. We're still working on it. We finished the bumpers, front, and the sliders and the skid plates. The cage we're working on right now. We're definitely going to have some. It has some issues where it's weak in the back, with some C-pillar supports. We'll also have harness bars front and rear. We'll have a center section in the back and a front section that's going to beef up the front section. We're trying to look at getting some of the test stuff on the JLs as far as from Jeep, where it comes down through the windshield. Jeep's done a decent job there, but it is lacking some support areas in a couple areas. One is a side-to-side support. We can see that it's going to need some extra bracing in that. Pay attention to our social media out there along with our website, and you'll see that we'll be coming out with some brace-up kits for it. Bill Arnett on JLWrangler.com says, the JL has protection underneath better than the JK. What do we see for additional armor? Actually, I don't think I think it's about the same, Bill. They left the oil pan completely open. They left the transfer case pretty open. The fuel tank skid is thin again. There's really no canister there, but they did put a big resonator in the exhaust and your control arm skids. We've been getting some requests. I think there's a couple things that need to be done on the JL skid plates that we've come out with. We've added 2 more cross members going across. With the extra length in the transmission going to the 8-speed over the versus the 6-speed, they moved that cross member, and it's allowed too much twist in the lower portion of the frame, and we've already heard other guys talking about it. We had, just getting into Moab here, we had 2 other guys come up to us, some customers that run shops that say, hey, what have you guys done on the skid plates, and what have you done for additional cross members? So Jeep did really well on their cross member they built, and they're kind of used very similar to what we've built before for our JKs. So they did a good cross member, but where it's at in the Jeep, it needs 2 additional ones. We've put one that goes across by the fuel tank skid and one in front of the other cross member and by the oil pan, between the oil pan and the transmission there. This has allowed us to give the support we need on our skid plates and to make it so you can really drag the Jeep. I mean, let's face it, a lot of guys that are in the JL market are going to be buying a Rubicon. They're going to go ahead and put 35s with maybe an inch of lift, 1.5 inch lift on them. So I really feel that the skid plates are going to be needed more on the JL, just because guys aren't going to be lifting them as much. They're going to be putting bigger tires on them because they got a lot more clearance without the lift. So we've come up with a skid plate system that you're literally going to be able to drag your Jeep over the obstacle. But great question, Bill, and I appreciate your time of sending that in. Jason Penley's on JL Wrangler says, when it comes to sliders, what are the most important features to consider? Like, should I look weld-on versus bolt-on, number of connection points, clearance, concerns, steel or aluminum? Jason, I think it's a great question. On the JL itself, what we've done is we've mounted to not only the pinch weld, but we've also mounted into the lower section of the body because there's some decent strength there where there hasn't been any other Jeeps produced, and we've went to the body bolts. There's no reason to build a weld-on slider at this time. The slider itself that we've produced is going to be stronger than what we've built for pretty much any of the other vehicles out there. I prefer steel as far as the slider. As you're putting a lot of weight on it, you're also lifting the vehicle off of it with a high lift jack or any other way you need to lift your vehicle. Pay attention when you're looking at sliders. Compare thicknesses of metal. When you compare it, you're going to see a big difference of what's out there. There's a lot of sliders out there available for the other Jeeps, the JKs and stuff, and as we get into the JLs, really pay attention. I mean, you're wheeling with a heavy vehicle here. Pay attention to thicknesses of metal and how they're built and the attachment points. I think if you'll find that, you'll see that rock hard 4x4 sliders are far superior than most of them out there. I got one here on JL Wrangler also. It's not Cal C68. It says, is there a winch plate that works with the JL? Our JK one that we built for years doesn't work with the JL as the plastic on the factory plastic front bumper comes up higher. We are working on redesigning it. We will have them out for the JL, not only for the plastic bumper, but for your factory steel bumper. I actually talked to this gentleman at a barbecue the other night here in town. It's from Shutterbug, and it says, I have a JK and a two-door, and the uprights that go to the dash, I've seen some cages where they go to the floor, and some of them that stop right on the side on the A-pillar. Ours stop on the side of the A-pillar. Some guys will offer a little piece that goes down a little bit further. Some of the Australian market, there's a Jeep club over there that does some off-road events that says that it has to touch the floor just because in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, most of the cages did before the dash-mounted and A-pillar mounted cages have took it over this industry. There's not much strength in the lower section of that floor right there. Therefore, we didn't go on down. The A-pillar has plenty of strength as far as mounted with our 3 bolts. We've looked at a lot of rollovers as far as trail and highway stuff, and there's no give it to that point of the mounting, so there's no reason to go any further than that. But great question. Ron Jensen sent an email. He says, will the rock hard winch plate, which mounts to the winch in front of the grill, impact cooling? You know, the most of these vehicles, I mean, we do our low winches, we do high winches. If you're running a power plant or something, we'd like to see it sunk down in the bumper just because it covers all of the grill. But Ron, it's really not an issue. I wheel a lot down in the Arizona parts of the country, New Mexico, Utah and stuff, Colorado, California where it's hot. Really don't have too much questions, not too much problems at all in my TJ or in my JK when I'm out wheeling as far as a cooling issue. I don't think you're going to have any problems. Hey Mark Scott, great question here. In what order are the JK skid plates installed? The fuel tank skid is independent of all. The canister skid is independent, but the majority of the people will start off with the oil pan skid and the transfer case skid. But the only area where they overlap is actually at the crossmember, so the transfer case skid goes above the oil pan skid so that it's an even flow from front to back. Doug Murray and Bill Jones both sent in questions that were really close, and it says, will you be making your oil pan transfer skid for aftermarket front housings? You know, Doug, there's quite a few different front housings out there, and there's also different suspensions that actually, some of them will push your front axle forward, bring it back closer. Majority of the time with a lot of aftermarket axles, there is clearance, but if you are running a 60 or some of the Dana 70, some of the bigger systems, there is a cooling area that they put in the front axle. We've had a lot of guys that just trim that. It's plenty of meat in their axle system. We've also had some guys that actually trimmed the front of the oil pan skid. The problem is there's really not a standard out there that guys are doing that we could make an adjustment on our end. Adelphia sent in an email and it says, any tip or tricks on trimming upper plastic for a JK cage? Don't confuse it. You're trimming it out around the cage. One thing that I seen the other day in a Jeep that made a really cool and clean install is he went ahead and took some of the upper webbing out of that area and trimmed it with the door trim that you put on a side of a door, like if you don't want door dings, you know, that go down. That you can get it at a lot of different auto parts stores. It's a bead stuff that slips on. He went ahead and trimmed out the upper plastic on the ribs on the inside and stuck that on there. It made a really clean install. So just take your time. Don't confuse it. You're mainly just trimming it out around the bar. J.R. Paulson sent in, what's your favorite Toyota looking for my first 4x4? You know, J.R., I'm somewhat of an older guy. I grew up with some of the FJs and some of the earlier Toyotas. And I mean, they're cool. I'm a Jeep guy. And the ability of so many different aftermarket parts that not only we make, but so many other great companies out there really make building a Jeep where you can build it to everything you're looking for. But we pretty much stick with the Jeep brand. Terry, you asked what was the first part you guys designed and sold. I said, well, I'm thinking back about this, and I'm going to go back and say we started building cages in the early 90s. My father and I did for a lot of welding cages back then before we built them as the bolt-in designs. Give you an idea how long we've been in this industry. If you go back and you look at the years ago, Larry McRae brought over a 91 YJ back in those early years, and we built one of our first bumpers on the back of his YJ in 91. JD Bike sent in a question on email. It says, what is it like working with your dad? My father and I have a good working relationship. We, over the years, we've not saying we didn't have our times where we challenged each other, but we understand the strong points that each of us have. I'm better at overseeing the back end side of the business, the sales, the marketing, the travel, the financial end of things. My father is very good at the manufacturing. He's very good at designing parts. He has a natural act for it. And I think over the years, as we've both gotten older, we finally come to the point of respecting each other. And I think now it works out really well because we have an understanding of his strong points. I have a strong understanding of he has an understanding of my strong points. And I think now we work off of each other instead of working away from each other. We respect each other now, and I think it's made it so it works out well. I want to say thanks for everybody that's sent in a lot of these questions. We appreciate the customers that we have with Rock Hard 4x4. We've been doing this for many years and have a great loyal following, and we're just blessed to be in this industry and produce the parts that we build. If this is something you guys enjoy, please send in more questions. We'll be glad to answer them again in the future.